Good morning, Senna. How are you?
I'm fine. Nice to see you.
Senna, it's been a while.
Yes.
The last time I came in and before I went back to the constituency, since I returned in Accra, this is my first time. And thank you so much for welcoming me into the studio.
It's nice to see you.
Thank you.
And of course, the reason we haven't met for a while is because you are attempting to take a seat that was said to be treasured by Dr. Baomi, a seat that he will not easily let go of. How did that go?
It was quite tough. And I have been in the trenches and I have been battling with the MPP in the Walewale constituency for the last 3 previous elections.
Okay.
I started on the ticket of the NDC in 2016.
Okay.
When His Excellency, the Vice President then, the former Vice President then was the running mate.
Okay.
But of course, they succeeded in defeating the NDC in 2016.
Okay.
So since then, I have been in the trenches. I have been committed.
Okay.
Spent all my time based in Walewale and doing everything possible to make sure that I rescue that seat for the NDC. 3 times we failed to rescue the seat, but I think that we take solace in the fact that we've contributed significantly to the victory of the NDC by way of the votes we garner in that particular constituency.
So I'm guessing, you made gains?
We made a lot of gains because if you really want to appreciate what happened in Walewale, of course you know very well that Ghanaians have a lot of considerations for which they vote.
Okay.
And tribalism and ethnic considerations is still a very strong element in voter choices and the kind of way people vote.
Okay.
So most definitely we couldn't rule out the impact of the former vice president on how the people make their choices in respect of who represent them in parliament. But of course, for our democracy to mature, we will have to begin to think about the fact that the maturity of our democracy, we must move away from certain other considerations that have been very strong in our choices. Voting based on ethnicity, basing vote on tribalism, it is not something that can help Ghana's democracy. So some of us who have been students of politics and governance, we think that should not matter. But of course, it's still way heavy on people's decision to vote the way they vote. And the gains we have made, if you really want to appreciate, we need to put it in context.
Okay.
I call on people to go and look at the results of the Walewale constituency over the last 3 elections and compare that to their opposite constituencies. For instance, in the last elections, 2024, if you want to know what the performance of the NDC in the Walewale constituency, I think the proxy indicator that brings you close to proper measurement is when you try to compare the performance of the MPP in His Excellency John Dramani Mohammed's constituency. And compare the figures. You will get to understand that indeed the Walewale constituency NDC is still a force to reckon with. Whilst in the case of Walewale, where His Excellency John Dramani Mohammed was getting more than 25,000 votes, His Excellency, the Vice President, who is also from my constituency, got less than 5,000 votes in that whole constituency. So it tells you that the NDC is quite a strong party in the Walewale constituency. Sometimes we want to measure achievement based on the ultimate results, winning the seat. But sometimes the presidency is basically built on absolute majority, 50% plus 1, and absolute figures contributed is also significant. So if you look at the number of votes we garnered for the presidential candidate of the NDC, it tells you that we have also contributed significantly to the victory of His Excellency.
How close were you this time around?
This time it was the margin actually widened, because in 2016 we lost the seat by just 2,580 votes. But 2016 we lost by 2020 we lost by 1,679. So based on that precedence, we felt we were getting the gap closed in. But this time around, the gap rather went up to 5,000 plus between me and Dr. Kabir, who won the seat. But that is not something that should be surprising to Ghanaians, because this is rather the time our brother, the elder brother, the incumbent vice president, was now the presidential candidate. So it most definitely might show a difference between when he was a running mate in 2016, then incumbent vice president in 2020, and then this time around, the flag bearer of the MPP. So most definitely, if people want to make their choices based on tribalism and ethnic affiliation, That it is therefore not surprising that this time around the gap rather widened to 5,000 instead of the previous 1,679.
You're saying that you feel that the people within the constituency wanted to turn up for the vice president?
Of course. Most definitely, because this is rather the time the MPP's performance in the constituency rather improved more significantly than previously.
Okay.
In the past, the difference between the NDC and the MPP presidential candidate has always been about hovering around 5,000 votes. This time round, the presidential differences went beyond the 5,000 threshold that we've always known and observed over the years.
Okay.
And the parliamentary too, as I said, the difference between me and the MPP parliamentary candidates was hovering around 2,000, 1,600 or something. But this time I went to 5,000. So there is no other indicator to explain why, except the fact that this time round, His Excellency, the former Vice President, was now a presidential candidate. And you understand the Ghanaian politics, strongholds of political parties sometimes are defined and determined by certain factors, including ethnicity and tribalism.
I see. But if it was about them turning up for the vice president, shouldn't that be reflected more in the presidential votes than the parliamentary votes? Because I think parliamentary votes are a contest between two people who should be known locally, which people will express a confidence in getting behind them to represent them in parliament. Shouldn't that be the case?
That is for you and I, who perhaps has a reasonable level of education when it comes to issues of politics and governance and all that. Okay. But for the people who consider tribal affiliation as a very important factor, people want to ride on the image of tribalism. For instance, if you look at what happened, the major campaign message of my opponent and their political party was about a loss of the seat by the MPP will be disgraceful to the vice president. Because how can you choose not to vote for the party of a presidential candidate who is from your area? So even though it was supposed to be more of the president himself, but his influence trickled down and encompasses also the idea that it was very important that the MPP wins the seat to beat home the significance of him as a home guy or as a home person. So it was not entirely a campaign of only the presidential, but it became also a factor that, look, we cannot disgrace our brother. For the MPP to lose the Walewale seat, it will mean a presidential candidate has failed to secure the parliamentary seat of his own constituency. And that became the major political factor or used by the MPP. And the people, it resonated with the people's wisdom, and they decided to vote for.
But that's messaging.
Of course.
They couch their messaging. So if you knew that message, it was for you to also couch an alternative message that was able to match that one, or that was not?
We did. We made them to understand that in the Northeast region, which was His Excellency's hometown, was quite insignificant when it comes to determining who becomes the president of this country. So we could not focus just more on our tribal affiliation and forget about the bigger story in Ghana, where everybody who was following the media landscape, anybody who was following the political conversation in Ghana would have realized that the MPP was losing the elections. We made all effort to let them understand, let us be part of the wind of change. Let us know that, yes, our brother is the sitting vice president and he wants to become the president. But our votes may not be the ultimate determiner of who becomes the president. And let us also go with the change. Let us join His Excellency John Dramani Mahama in the new government. But of course, as I said, it is one thing for us to couch as our messages, but it is also another thing for the people to buy in. And if the people felt that, then of course, you know that in rural areas and in most parts of Ghana, politics is still heavily influenced by ethnic affiliation. Why do we call the MPP, why do we say the Eastern region is an MPP stronghold? Why is the Ashanti region an MPP stronghold? Most definitely, it has something to do with either some ethnic precedents, some affiliation in the past, some historical antecedent which is anchored and built on ethnic issues. So it's still a very strong factor in Ghana. And at the end of the day, when we lost the seat, we never got worried. We know there was a factor that was quite forceful, and that is the tribal considerations.
When you say tribal anything, are you suggesting that your background is different from that of the vice president?
That is what it means. You have two children who are going out to hunt. One has a potential to kill an elephant. The other one has the potential to bring you home a rabbit. They are both your children. But human as we are, people are always looking for where there is more. So they felt it was important to elevate and celebrate the child who is bringing home presidency compared to the one who was only bringing out, perhaps they consider me as... If you listen to the campaign, they will tell you that they cannot sacrifice a vice presidential opportunity for perhaps a ministerial opportunity, because they felt at the end of the day, if you win the seat and become a member of parliament, the best you could bring home was to be appointed a minister of state. And then they begin to do that contrast and comparison between an opportunity a minister of state or a member of parliament could bring home vis-a-vis the opportunities that a president is likely to engender for their people. So this kind of analysis are those that people use in order to... So it doesn't matter that I'm also a Mampresi. I am. And everybody accepts the fact that I am. And as a regional minister, when I became a regional minister for a brief period of time, I also made sure that I caused and engendered a lot of development opportunities for the same communities. They talk about it, they make reference to it, they talk about it. But you know, Oliver Twist, they always ask for more. So they felt with His Excellency the Vice President, the community and the area had a propensity to benefit more than you who is likely to become just a member of parliament and perhaps at best a minister of state. And that is also a rational.
So that was the major consideration.
That is actually the major consideration because most of the elections in the land, it is always not on the merit of the candidate. We who are in NDC have always been trying to bring to the front burner the narrative and the argument about capacity, merit, to be able to deliver, but they will also hang on that strong instrument of, okay, yes, we know this person is capable. There are sometimes where you hear our opponents say that, yes, nobody doubts Abuba's capacity to deliver. Everybody believes that Abuba is a gentleman. Everybody thinks that Abuba is capable of doing it. But at the end of the day, the but highlights the fact that you don't belong to a party that the tribe, the ethnic group, wants to go with, because they think that at this particular point in time, of course, to become a president of Ghana, this was the first time the Mampresis have somebody that close to becoming the president of Ghana. And they consider that a huge opportunity. So there was no amount of persuasion that could let them change their view on who becomes the winner of the elections.
If you are listening to Honorable ABUBAKARI ABDULLA, who is Walewale constituency PC for the NDC in the just gone by constituency elections, and of course, he's a former Northern Regional Minister himself. Now the constituency is in the Northeast region, but an assessment. Vice President Bawumia was Vice President for 8 years. For those 8 years, let's limit to the Walewale constituency. See the kind of development that they expected from somebody that close to the presidency. Do they see that kind of development? Are there results to show that this was a man who was in the presidency, we all put our votes behind him, and he's delivering for us?
This question is a very contentious one, where the answer you get depends on who speaks. Me, as a development practitioner and somebody who belongs to the NDC, I strongly believe, despite the fact that there have been one or two development interventions in the area, I strongly believe that he did not live up to expectation. He never delivered as much as we expected of him. And this is even a matter that was being discussed during the political campaign. Let's talk about Walewale. You said Walewale constituency, right?
Yes.
As we speak now, in Walewale constituency, of course, they initiated some number of development projects going on. The last time I came here, we discussed the watermelon factory, as part of the 1D, 1F initiative of the MPP. That project was commissioned about 2 to 3 weeks to the elections. It is not operational. It's an empty container that was commissioned. I don't think that if I were the vice president, for 8 years that my party was, the main mantra in my party was 1D, 1F, I would have exited 8 years later without a functional factory in that constituency. But it was one, and because they had to hurriedly come to commission but they commission an uncompleted project. Because any factory that is supposed to produce any product at the day of commissioning must test run.
Yes.
And then the product shared and for people to see. Get out there and check. If you can find any watermelon produced from that, watermelon juice produced from that factory, it's empty, it's uncompleted. But it was commissioned. In Walewale, which is the district capital, what you talk about there is an astrostef that was constructed.
Astrostef?
Yeah. That was done in the Walewale district. We have one there which was engineered and initiated and constructed by the MPP administration. The MPP communicators are quick to count that as part of their achievement.
Okay.
Yes, when you are measuring achievement, it is not just about an absolute intervention.
Okay.
It's about the intervention vis-a-vis the capacity and the time period on which the person delivers that.
Okay.
If you use 10 years to build a primary school, 6 years, yes, you have built a 6-unit classroom block. But anybody who wants to do proper analysis of your performance may juxtapose that against the time period within which you have done that.
Okay.
And also consider that relative to your capacity as the person who is executing the project. So, Senna, you notice that for 8 years as a sitting vice president, these are the few things that one can talk about, the achievement that we have gotten. Of course, some road constructions are going on.
Okay.
But I, as a former regional minister, feel that if I were to be there, continue to be there as a regional minister for 8 years, my performance would have surpassed what we have achieved.
You would have done better?
Because I was the first person to consider the construction of the Walewale Township roads. And I completed one. And the contractor was supposed to move into a second one before we lost power in 2016. And I initiated that at the time Walewale as a community was not even qualified to get that kind of opportunity. Because people don't know that urban roads that is responsible for the construction of roads within the inner city and urban environment operates only in metropolitan and municipal assemblies.
Okay.
A district assembly, an absolute district assembly as defined, which is not a metropolis or a municipality, urban roads does not operate in that environment.
Okay.
So as at the time I was then the regional minister and I got the construction of the roads in Walewale Township initiated. Walewale was not a metropolitan assembly, a municipal assembly.
Okay.
It was an ordinary district assembly, meaning it had to take a lot of negotiation and lobbying to get the construction of the roads in Walewale Township initiated. But fast forward, when Hajia Alima Muhammad became the Minister of Local Government, quickly Walewale and the other environment became municipal assemblies.
Okay.
I mean, they were now qualified and legitimate to access those opportunities. And then the MPP administration continued the road construction. But I believe that if I were to be there for the last 8 years, I don't think the state of performance as they have delivered could be measured up to what we should have been able to do.
Are you suggesting that the members of parliament elected over this period, whilst Dr. Bawumia has been the running mate, then became the vice president, and then became the flag bearer, these persons who have been elected on the ticket of the MPP are only beneficiaries of the vice president's face on the ticket of the MPP?
Exactly. But the fact of the matter, if you put that at what they have been able to achieve within the period and over the period, cumulatively, compared to what an individual of them could have delivered, you notice that it was an abysmal performance.
Okay.
Because I know of other constituencies where there were members of parliament
without
a native vice president from their area who did far much better.
Okay.
So most of these people who were appointed or elected as members of parliament, they were riding on the shadow of His Excellency the Vice President. And every little thing that is done, even during the campaign, this is the 2024 election, you could not tell what the MPP, what we got as a result of the Vice President, and different from what we got from the members of parliament. Everything that was done was being attributed to either the parliament, member of parliament, or sometimes the vice president. So I'm saying that cumulatively, a member of parliament who perhaps became a minister, in addition to a vice president.
So you put the two together.
If you put that together and check the might and the influence of all of them, vis-a-vis what they delivered, there's nothing to conclude but to judge it as an abysmal performance.
I see. What about the... but I also want to ask, was that your biggest challenge, or it was a matter of the fact that you couldn't match them resource-wise?
I think for this previous election, there were some 3 important factors.
Okay.
And Senna, I will want to crave your indulgence not to elaborate on the 3rd one.
Okay.
Because it's a sensitive matter.
Okay.
But I can mention that briefly.
Okay.
Yes, there was no way I could match them with resources.
Okay.
Because they leverage on government services.
Okay.
Distribution of fertilizer. You remember there was a flood. Flood occurred in the north.
Okay.
There was also some long drought.
Yes.
At the initial stages of the rainy season.
Okay.
So the government of Ghana then decided that there was the need for them to provide support for farmers and also provide food aid.
Yeah.
So a lot of fertilizer was brought to the north to support farmers to be able to farm. This fertilizer was being distributed and used to garner votes. You gather the people, take photographs and give them $5 of fertilizer and tell them, His Excellency the Vice President says we should give you this fertilizer, but you people should remember to go and vote for the MPP. So the distribution of this fertilizer, and I am telling you that even the night before the elections, we were on each other's heels, where the MCE and together with party functionaries were distributing the food aid that came was now used to buy votes.
Okay.
Distributing bags of maize, bags of rice to families and demanding votes from them in return.
Really?
Of course it happened. The evidence is clear. And we were there. It was not something that was done secretly. It was openly done.
So a national intervention.
The national intervention that was meant to support farmers to farm and then food aid to people who had lost food crops as a result of flooding. That did no longer go to the people who deserve it. It was now being used as collateral to gain votes.
Okay.
And it was distributed during... Look, they kept it and started distributing that just a few days into the elections. And it had a huge impact. So in terms of resources, we could not match them.
Okay.
The second factor is this issue of the vice presidential candidate or the presidential candidate of the MPP being from Walewale constituency.
Okay.
You ask yourself the question, imagine if today, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, who is now our president, we lost the Boale Bomboy seat. You, the media, would have tabled that up for discussion. And most definitely it would have been a factor to talk about. So just the same way, if you flip the story, it is of equal measure that Walewale, which is the vice presidential the presidential candidate's hometown, most definitely would have been a seat that they will be so keen to win. And the tribal and ethnic relation in actual fact played out. And that is, let me tell you one thing. The Northeast region has 6 constituencies.
Okay.
3 are where the core Mamprises. Mampurgu is not Mamprises.
Okay.
Mampurgu traditional area extends beyond where Mamprises reside.
Okay.
I think you need to understand this.
Yeah.
For instance, you have the Asantehene. Asantehene's jurisdiction, when you say Asante Kingdom, the boundary may transcend the boundaries of areas where only Asantes live. So if you take the Northeast region and you also take the Mampurgu Kingdom, its boundaries transcends beyond areas that are inhabited by only Mamprises. So where the Mamprises are predominant, the predominant population of those constituencies, we lost all the 3.
Okay.
Nalero Gambaka constituency was a seat held by the NDC. We lost it.
Okay.
Walewale, we lost it. The Mampurgu Yakaba Kubori, we lost it. NDC lost these 3.
Okay.
But rather won the other 3 in the other areas where Mamprises are not the predominant inhabitants of the area.
Okay.
So it tells you there was a clear dichotomy between those that the MPP won and that of the NDC. This is a clear evidence of the fact that indeed the tribal factor was quite strong. You know, Alhaji Baba was the MP for Naliru Gambaga. He won the seat. He defeated Haji Ali Muhammad, the then former Minister of Local Government in 2020. And when this time around, he also lost his seat. And I lost in Walewale. And then my colleague...
Are you talking about one of the persons who've been nominated for...
The Minister of Climate Change and Sustainability.
Okay, he lost his seat.
He lost his seat this time around. And these three constituencies...
And I think there's no suffer when it comes to resources.
Exactly.
Okay, I see.
But of course, no matter how rich... I know he's a rich man, but I don't think that he could challenge a ruling government who decided to distribute government resources from government interventions on the heels of winning an election. So that is quite a difference. So the ethnic factor... The third factor that I really don't want us to elaborate because it's quite a sensitive matter is the Boko conflict.
Really?
The Mamprosivency. That check the resource of the Upper East region from the Boko enclave. Did you follow the performance of His Excellency?
It was a clean sweep for the NDC.
You think it was for just because?
Yes.
You think it was just for the love of the NDC? It is not just for the love of the NDC. It was because the presidential candidate of the MPP was a Mamprosi man. There are police stations where it is reported that he got 0. Are you saying that they don't have party executives in those police stations?
I see.
So what happened in the Upper East, there was a mirror image in the Mamprogo enclave.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So the MPP got the Mamprosi-dominated constituency. They won all 3 of them.
Exactly.
So the places that the 3 that the NDC got were places where they were not the dominant.
They are not, Mamprosis are not, even though it's a Mamprogu traditional area, the population and the inhabitants of the area are not ethnically Mamprosis.
Okay. Very interesting.
We have the Bimobes, we have the Konkombes, we have the other tribes also that are also there as minority. But when you travel to the Upper East region and Boko Enclave and all that, where this issue, the Mamprosis in Boko were also known to be mostly the MPP people, and the other tribes, and the issue of the Kusas is also being NDC, and because of what is happening in Boko currently, it should be able to raise concerns about why in the Boko enclave the NDC swept all to the extent that the presidential candidate, the MPP, could be getting zeros on certain polling stations, if what I've seen in social media were true.
True. Yeah.
And then the question you should ask is, didn't they even just have chairmen in those polling stations? Imagine you as a presidential candidate going to a particular area, a polling station where elections are done, and you get 0. And yet you have party executives in that particular area. Isn't that a factor for investigation?
I see. Quite interesting.
So in the core Mamprogo area where the NDC lost all the seats, it was because those of us who belong to the NDC were seen to belong to a particular regime. And the way it played out in the Upper East region, the mirror image is what we saw in the Mamprogo area. And these were the 3 important issues that made us to lose.
Well, we're talking about they just ended elections, but I also wanted to, the bigger Northeast region, has it seen that impact from the Vice President's stay?
No.
In terms of development?
No. If you want to be able to, in research, if you want to determine objective research, you do it in an environment, controlled environment, right? So, Northeast region, you are still talking about Northeast region. Why did the MPP lose in other 3 constituencies? It's because of the performance of the MPP as a political party. So in the other 3 constituencies, Yunyo constituency, Bumpurgu constituency, and then Charponi, these are the 3 constituencies in the non-Mamprosi dominated area of the region.
Okay.
It is only in that area where you can judge performance of the candidates based on the performance of the parties.
Okay.
So if the MPP actually performed to the admiration and expectations of the people of the Northeast region, then they shouldn't have lost the seats in Yuyu, Charponi, and Bumpurgu. For the other three that the MDC won, that we've already told you the factors that influence the voting outcome. So most definitely, it was not just about performance.
Okay.
So you can only bring in the issue of performance in the other areas because the tribal influence was not there.
No,
so you could preclude that conversation. But that area would have been basically about the performance of the MPP as a party. And their performance, just like anywhere in Ghana, so shameful, so abysmal. In fact, they were not only not making progress, they were actually taking this country backwards. And it reflected almost everywhere in Ghana. And that is why the defeat was so massive. Unprecedented defeat that has never happened in this country. Because Ghanaians spoke, and they spoke loudly. And they spoke based on their judgment and experiences of the performance of the elsewhere administration led by His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo.
You're saying that Northeast region was no different from anywhere else in Ghana?
Perhaps it was worse.
Perhaps it was worse.
In governance, very often rural regions and rural areas often sometimes do not get as much as they deserve. And sometimes it also happens because they do not have very effective leadership.
Okay.
And when these things happen, even when development is happening almost everywhere, different shades of development happens.
Okay.
And they usually are the margins and they are the disadvantaged group of people.
Okay.
So if you are talking about the situation in Ghana, and you think that economic hardship, who doesn't know in this country that poverty is more pervasive in northern Ghana? And therefore, if there was economic hardships in Ghana and people in Accra, Kumasi, these big cities that have other alternative source of income and others were complaining of economic hardship, then if there was something worse than economic hardship, that would have been prevailing in the rural areas of Northeast region.
I see. That part.
Exactly.
Because there are those who I speak to who tell me if there's one region that has the potential of being, and has always been, one of the biggest contributors to food production in Ghana, it's not this.
Of course.
That's accurate, right?
Of course. Northeast region has arable lands that are unoccupied and very fertile, but it doesn't take potential to produce. Potential is only a factor. There are many other factors that will interplay on production. If I have a very good piece of land and yet I do not have access to easy and timely tractor services, how does that land produce? Farmers were looking for tractors they couldn't get. Because of increasing and escalating prices of fuel, tractor services were inaccessible. Plus the issues of climate change and flooding and all those things. And unfortunately, in those rural areas, as I've mentioned to you, their main preoccupation and mainstay of their economy is farming. And yet when farmers cannot do well, they do not have any alternative livelihood source. So most definitely, if it is in Accra and I'm a farmer, and then the rain stops for a while, I should simply just walk out there and begin to look for some other menial job to do to be able to make a living. In the rural areas, you don't have that. So honestly speaking, the governance style that we experience, the governance regime we experience under His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo really brought excruciating economic hardship on rural folks. And Northeast region is not an exception. It is not. The fact that we had a sitting vice president from our area, there could not be an exclusive economic intervention for the people of Northeast region. So what pertains in everywhere Ghana, equally pertain in the Northeast region.
I'm asking because if you have somebody from the region who is supposed to be representing the region, supposed to understand the region, this person should essentially be pushing interventions that ensure that the potential of the region is leveraged on. You're saying that the potential of the region to produce a lot more and empower farmers, that has not been leveraged on during the tenure of the MPP.
Not at all. And I'm simply the last statement I just made. I'm asking, if the MPP administration led by His Nana Akufo-Addo was that good to have been able to initiate such laudable initiatives. I'm saying that our own brother couldn't have done an affirmative action on only North-East region. It couldn't have been an affirmative action of East, where it's okay for North-East region. This is a special initiative for you because I'm a vice president.
Not really.
His performance.
But there's something to sell, is there not?
His performance was basically part and parcel of the failure of Nana Akufo-Addo. The government had a philosophy, and they rule based on certain principles and policies. And what we saw in North-East region was equally the outcome of what they decided to do nationwide. So North-East region never got anything special because we had a brother being a vice presidential candidate.
I see.
Like I mentioned to you, the astroturf that was constructed in Walewale. Was it only in Walewale that those things were done?
Many
in my area, when I'm passing home in Accra here and I pass through Medina Zongo, I find an astroturf. When you go into the other parts of Accra, they are all over the place. So this was not an exclusive gift or intervention for the North-East region or for Walewale because we had a vice president. Of course, somebody will say perhaps we got it because of his influence. But it is not that unique for us to claim that because we were special in getting that. No.
I see.
I don't think so.
I wanted to ask, having that in mind, how significant was that drought, the impact of that drought on the inhabitants of the region, especially the farmers, predominantly farmers?
You see, the North, you would have known that the raining pattern in Ghana, whereby we have certain parts of Ghana that has double, what we call in geography, double maximum of rain. Yeah. They have two regimes of rainfall. There's a short dry season, and there's a major raining season and a minor raining season. In those particular parts of Ghana, when there is some experience of drought, the loss can easily be compensated by the following rainy regime that will come. In the north, we have this long dry season for about 6 to 7 months. The rainy season is also just about 6 months period. And our rain starts setting in somewhere April, May. The moment the rains delay, April, May, and then sometimes comes in around June, there are certain types of crops that are lost. You can no longer cultivate those crops.
Okay.
We also take that 6-month period to also do some kind of cropping, whereby you can crop some type of crops that can be quick yielding, quick maturing. This, and you harvest and you come back again and be able to do something on the land. And unfortunately, these peasant farmers that are practicing agriculture in the north, look, my brother, people harvest and they are not able to feed themselves all year round. And even to have seeds that you will use to plant the next season becomes quite challenging. So such a peasant farmer goes to get his seeds through whatever means. He plants, there's a drought, and those crops wither and die off. Even when the rains gets back, there are many farmers who might not even be able to go back again to plow. They are not able to go back to acquire the seeds to go and plant, and they've lost out. So there was actually a significant impact on a lot of the peasant farmers. And don't forget that these are farmers who are what we call, they farm for sustenance, basically produce to feed themselves. And this particular year, we should watch out. We should watch out because there will be a lot of hunger up north.
I see.
Because a lot of people might have lost their food crops. Unfortunately, the intervention that was made to cushion them against the impact was used for political patronage, partisan patronage, distributed to party, cronies, and used to buy votes.
So a few things. By this time, people are clearing their lands, I guess.
What's their farmland? This time? No.
This January, or it's too early?
No, it's too early. Of course, except a situation where somebody wants to clear a virgin land. To start a new farm altogether, then most definitely they will be there. Uprooting those who do rice fields. If it is an area that has not been cultivated before, most definitely you have to start clearing the land now, so that somewhere April, that you'd have had the land ready. Otherwise, normal farming practices in the north start somewhere April. And the rains are usually expected It starts setting up somewhere towards the half of April, then you start experiencing the rainy season.
Your party is in power now. What can they do to avert that hunger or that thing that you're talking about?
We're hoping, the media might have followed the story about how some foodstuffs were being ransacked in some constituencies immediately after. Those were the foodstuffs that were brought, supposed to be used to cushion those who lost their farm produce in the last season.
Okay.
But because it was kept hoarded and being used to buy votes, it didn't go to the beneficiaries who should have gotten it. So in this particular moment, I think that the Excellency John Dramani Mahama and the Minister of Agriculture, the Honorable Eric, must begin to think about a measure that will actually help the farmers have some food before they initiate the next farming season. I know it's going to be a serious problem. And understand, unfortunately, because of the challenges the free SHS, the schools were faced in feeding the students, whatever food we had in stock is what they had to clear to go and support the schools to be able to feed. Meaning, what would have been given to the farmers is perhaps what is being given to the schools to feed the students. So the situation is going to be aggravated. And then a drastic measure must actually put in place. And I think that the Minister of Agri must focus on that as an issue to be resolved.
That issue must be resolved.
It has to be. It has to be.
Urgently. But in terms of support for the farmers ahead of the season, what can be given?
Of course, if they are able to get farm inputs and also be able to commandeer enough tractors, even on commercial basis, in order to support farmers at subsidized prices. Sometimes it is not even just about the price, it's even about the availability. And some of us who have lived and experienced this situation know that His Excellency Dramani Mahama couldn't have thought better when he talked about the agric mechanization and services centers, where farmers will get these inputs timeously, because it's very important to get it at the appropriate time. Certain crops do well only when it is planted at certain times of the year. And yet a farmer keeps running around and looking for a farmer tractor services and cannot get at the right time. When you get it later, you might only go and labor for nothing, but you will not get the yield you should have gotten because the plants were not planted at the proper time of the season. So to have thought about the farmer, because he's a farmer, he understands this, and also being a northerner, he has a very good appreciation of the experiences of farmers up north. So if we could commandeer between this period to April, certain arrangement could be made, even if it has to be made based on PPP arrangement with some organization that can assemble tractors easily and also be able to produce seeds, make seeds available for the farmers. It will be very helpful. It will be very helpful.
I see. Despite the fact that you did not win the seats, you must be excited that your party is now in power with a commanding majority in parliament, and the win was overwhelming. That must excite you.
Of course, I'm very excited. I'm very excited because compared to what could have happened, imagine I lost the seat and my party also loses the presidential election. That would have been an absolute 100% lost. So I lost my seat, all right. But NDC being in power for me is quite exciting for me, and I'm really very happy that the party won. If we go back to play the expression made by His Excellency, the former President John Agyekum Kufuor, that he prefers to be a messenger in the party of a ruling government to being a general secretary in a party in opposition. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that statement, and we all relate with it. And I believe that.
How?
Of course.
I've heard people repeat that. Yeah.
I'm a former minister. For the past 8 years in Walewale, not even a single day was I ever invited to any government function.
A former minister?
Yes.
Not once?
Not once. Not even the inauguration of district assemblies. Not once was I ever remembered in that constituency. It was only in Tamale where occasionally when there's SIF match, I get a letter because I was Northern Regional Minister and Tamale was then our capital. The people in Tamale gave me much more respect than the people in Walewale constituency, where never was I ever invited as a former minister to participate in any decision making and any activity in the constituency, not even to participate as a participant in a public gathering. Never.
The constituency from which you hail?
Yes, born and bred. And the MCE was my student in secondary school. He never thought one day that this particular event that we are gathering citizens and stakeholders in the constituency or in the district to discuss this particular issue. Never was I ever invited, not even once, for the past 8 years. And I wasn't the only one. It happened even with the immediate former DCE that I worked closely with, Honorable David Winnie. Never. So if with this experience I have as not only a politician, but a practitioner of development, because I did a lot of NGO work, and I'm a student of development and governance. And I know a lot about governance. And Walewale constituency cannot at least even consider me as somebody worthy of making an input into some governance discussion going on. Of what use is that? So if my party now is in power, I know that very soon when the district assemblies are set up and the MCE who is going to be in charge, anything that has to do with the governance of the area where stakeholders are being invited to be part, most definitely I know I will be invited.
So at least you have an opportunity to make an input into the development of the area.
I have an opportunity to make an input. I have an opportunity to be consulted. I have an opportunity to make suggestions. I have an opportunity to play a role.
But is that enough? Because I know there's a lot of loss when it comes to politics. Because once your party has this power, you even find it difficult to even use your own qualifications to seek work to do. Most politicians have not been able to work in many years because their parties left power among others. Is the party be in power enough?
You have a very clear example and a good example right before you. For the last 8 years, I have been unemployed. Since I left office on the 7th of January 2017, I have since been unemployed. Because my background before my appointment was NGOs.
Okay.
So I did a lot of
involved with
an NGO work before I got it.
Yeah.
And then after a while I decided to go to school. And after that, my preoccupation was to win the seat. So I spent most of my time doing party work. So for the last 8 years, I've been doing party work. Organizing the party, getting involved, dealing with the community, dealing with the party at the branch level, and preparing the grounds to be able to win the seat. So for the past 8 years, I've been unemployed. Perhaps if my party was in power, even though I lost my seat, most definitely there would have been something for me to do. But because my party was not in power, I sat home for good 8 years. As I speak with you, I'm unemployed. So I had to use part of the time to go to school. I started a PhD, and even because of running the party and stepping into elections and stepping out, it has even affected my ability to complete the course.
So you still haven't?
I haven't finished. I'm still working on the thesis.
I see.
Of course, after losing the election, I have the attention and the mind to go and work on it.
Honorable ABUBA, in fact, you're one of the sharpest people I know. That shouldn't be a problem for you.
Thank you.
Moving into this thing.
Sometimes it's about the capacity to what we call multitask. And sometimes availability of resources to support that multitasking.
Okay.
Is very critical.
I see.
Particularly as a family man.
Well, nice to meet you again.
Thank you.
And I was actually looking out for your name in one of the lists, but I haven't seen your name yet. I'm still checking. Anyway, but thank you. Thank you very much.
Are you going to do advocacy for me? Maybe you have to start mentioning to His Excellency the President that ABUBA has not been appointed yet. Maybe you join me in the advocacy and that might help.
I'm cautious about advocacy. Okay. So, but thank you. But I wish you all the best. I certainly wish you all the best.
Senator, thank you so very much for this opportunity. And then let me take a few seconds of your time to greet the people of Walewale. If you don't mind, I want to just say something in Mamprele briefly.
Okay. Oh, please.
That's suba wa the constituency NDC dema neta badema ta pradema ban wumna to awa aswa to puriaza ni atuma kaya ne yako sohma katanya to gwamnati ma ngwe tati bonshila na amfanshil dembe ne tazabera la daso gumani so tena besoin njilma puni mpur so kamza asubo. I'm basically telling them that let's pray to see how the new government will inure to our benefit as a group of people, and that we continue to pray for the fruits of the new government to also fall on our side, in our backyard. Basically, that's what I said. So
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us this morning. Yes.
And thank you so much to your listeners who have been with us throughout this season.
ABUBAKARI ABDULLA is the immediate past parliamentary candidate for the National Democratic Congress in Walewale, Baomia's backyard. The man who attempted to take Baomia's seat
3 times.
3 times. Yet to succeed, though. Are you giving up, or if you had the opportunity, you go at it again?
I read a book. The title is "Tough Times Don't Last, but Tough People Do."
Okay.
And in that book, I took an inspiration. And they said that when the going becomes tough, you don't change your decision to go, you change your direction.
You change your direction, not your decision to go.
What I want to do for the people of Walewale constituency remains my objective.
Okay.
How I do it, I may have to consider how I do it.
I see. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so very much.
This one is birthday dedications. Is a happy birthday for